Bienvenido, NPCs, to the Sad Dad Games podcast, where if the games are sad, Dad, we're going to talk about it. We're your hosts, Shan.
I'm Eric.
I'm Luke.
I'm Tucker.
And I'm Emerlie.
We are going to continue our discussion about The Last of Us Part 2, the opening act, up until spoilers.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. Spoilers. Spoilers.
This is a spoiler.
Someone sing the spoiler song. Luke, sing it.
It'll be
spoiled.
We need a soundbite that's like, it's like Finding Nemo. Spoilers. Spoilers.
It's like bunger, 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 bunger.
I think we need
everyone be quiet for a second. Luke is going to sing us the spoiler song.
All right. So we are going to be talking about Joel's death. Highly controversial. And we have some hot takes, but we have to do the groundwork to get to this point. And where we left off was talking about biggest sandwiches. And here's a hot take. I think I like Seth. And I think I like him a lot, not for what he did, which was egregious, but because he's complicated and he has potential. And maybe he was just acquiescing to Maria's firm-handed leadership, but he has potential. And we need to give him the space to do the right thing. What do you think?
I agree with that. He did something really unkind and was super out of line when he said those things to Ellie and Dina. But I think that the next day he's saying sorry, he's giving them sandwiches. He's doing his best to make amends. And it's important to be kind to each other and give each other some grace.
I think something that was really profound for me to learn is how you initially react is how society taught you to react. But the way that you react after that is your true nature. So he initially reacted because he was told, hey, this is a bad thing. And then he's like, oh, shoot, I'm sorry. Let me make up for that.
Interesting. I think that's a good take. And I think cancel culture warriors could take a note that, well, okay, this is a tangent, right? But like, I think you could persuade a lot more people to be open-minded or to be persuaded to come to your side if you were a little more gentle. I know that that's not often our first response to something that transgresses our values, but remember, values are relative and everybody is going to be on a different part of the spectrum. And why in the world would you react to somebody spewing hatred to you with an apology? Maybe you should come to them with kindness, even though it doesn't feel like what they deserve, and they'll be more open-minded and we can start to mend some bridges. That's my hot take.
Well, and the real beauty of grace is that it's never deserved, right? It's never fair, but that's what also makes the world beautiful. That's what love is really all about, and sacrifice. So you never really earn it or deserve it. And I agree with you. Yeah, I think it might not have been easy for Seth to apologize. And even though it maybe took some coaxing from Maria to get there, I love that he takes the step to do that. I love that what that says about Seth as a person, that he is bigger than saying one stupid thing. And let's be honest, how many of us haven't been there where we've said a stupid thing that we wish we could have taken back, or we said something ignorant because we didn't know any better? Everybody does that. Literally everybody does, which is why all of us need that kindness. All of us need that apology. All of us need that grace. That's the beauty of it.
This moment is just a really good microcosm of why the Jackson society works, why they haven't torn each other apart, why they are okay sharing resources and having this actual community.
Right.
I think we have to remember that he comes from the old world. And let's remember that the old world did cease to exist before gay marriage was allowed and started to become more acceptable. And so maybe he carries that into this world, but also in this society, this community that they've created, there might be also a responsibility of repopulation, which you can't do if you're not in a straight relationship. So maybe that kind of carries into it as well, of there's a responsibility here to repopulate and just do what you need to do to keep this community thriving.
I think this is like, it's a beautiful thought, right? Like they have a very small community And Maria knows that it all falls apart if she allows things like this to spiral. And so she needs to squash beefs proactively, or else her version, which they refer to as socialism, basically, but like this version of a society that is functional and everybody has the right to self-determination, it falls apart. And so they have to abide by a higher order of social contract where they are more forthcoming and they have to go out of their way. They don't get to just hide when they make a mistake. They have to fix it. And I thought that was beautiful. Often now we are able to do something egregious and then just run away from those mistakes, and it festers and it creates more division. Yeah. I just, for example, I would not be married right now if my wife had not been forced to be around me by working with me for a couple of years. She did not like
True
me at
story.
first, but because she was forced to be there and we were forced to get through ups and downs, we found common ground, and years later, we're still married. And so there's just something beautiful to that, being forced to be around each other and make compromises and apologize to each other and constantly work on relationships.
I want to point out that Heather was your manager, right? So
She
there's
took
a
the role
power
for me,
imbalance.
which was part of
Oh.
the underlying
Ooh.
tension.
Ooh.
Well, there's that power imbalance, and she took advantage of you.
I have no problem with powerful women. I actually I love
I'm
that
married
stuff,
to one,
right?
but
It was just that like I was next in line and then she was rehired and then took the role. And that is what caused the subtext of a grievance.
Well, I think Heather was also going off of what other people felt about you, and she had to learn to get to know you
Right.
and not just other people's impressions of you.
I also need to point out that she did deserve it because she's a better person.
Yes, I've told Shan she's too good for you.
That's how it should be. Yeah.
The only way that I was going to come into a managerial position was by ascension, because there was nobody else that had the right amount of experience, right? But she actually had the credentials of like empathy and competence that I didn't have.
You heard it here. Shan lacks empathy and competence.
Social skills, soft skills, all these things I lack.
something as flippant as credentials, as being qualified. Okay.
Yeah.
Drama at the Village Inn.
Right. And I loathed people that I served. I never overcame that. I just wanted the power.
I don't think that was unique to you. I think a lot of servers feel that way.
Because they're making $213 an hour.
Yeah.
And maybe
As a
I wanted
former
to make
server,
$750.
yeah.
There's something aspirational about that amount.
But you did get free pie, which we all benefited from.
We all benefited from that.
We did get a lot of free
Yeah.
pie.
Yeah. So much pie.
It's not a euphemism. Shan brought home actual pies for us.
Who among us put on the most weight in college, right? Like all of us fluctuated.
Yeah.
That's an interesting topic.
I don't put on
Eric
weight. I've
did.
been slightly chubby for years.
Nope,
Yeah,
nope. That's when you ballooned. You were a scrawny kid.
I was.
And then you
I was
became
very
a
scrawny
then you
in
put
high
on
school.
your man weight.
Yep. And now I'm a normal sized boy.
That's
I'm a
that's
normal
it.
boy.
You became normal.
I'm normal. I filled out into a normal sized adult man.
But we've all gone through those weight spirals. Luke, you went up above 200.
Oh,
you
definitely. Yeah.
220, 230.
Really?
Yeah.
We never saw it, which is unfortunate, but the pictures are hilarious.
I did. I
He was like a little balloon boy.
I was a little. I tried.
Oh.
I tried to hide it,
Yeah.
and I wasn't hiding it very well. But yeah, I think when I hit 230, I was like, "This is enough. This has to."
I can't even comprehend you not being skinny.
Yeah, this thing happens, kids. Your metabolism slows down, and you realize
That's not what it was.
you can't just.
You
eat-
were in your early 20s.
You can't just eat whatever. Yeah,
It was all
it
metabolism.
changes sometimes in different stages of life for different people. But when I was 16, to be fair, I could have overeaten anything all day long, no matter what it was, and it would not have affected my body because I was.
And you
16
often
years
did
old.
by eating our snacks without permission.
Yeah.
May I remind you that you ate all of my cheese puffs on multiple occasions? You thought so long as the container existed, you were entitled to it.
Listen, this is still my problem. This is the reason I don't buy junk food. I have absolutely no portion control. I'm pretty sure the part of my brain that controls my like hunger center, it's completely broken. I don't experience hunger. If there is food, I will just keep eating it and I just won't stop. Like there's nothing to say, hey, dummy, you're full. Stop it. I just like keep eating garbage.
Yeah.
All right. Now that we're back into it, we go back to Ellie and Dina, and they are going out on patrol. Is this right?
Yep.
Let's see. What story beat are we on?
So they go out on patrol and then they're hit by a storm.
And
okay, so they
us.
take the horse Shimmer out. Now, thematically,
Shimmer.
we know what Shimmer,
R.I.P.
what is the name based on? It's light. Everything is about light and darkness. They have no compunction with like hammering this motif. And so just pay attention to that. So they go out on patrol and you get to see their dialogue evolve where they're poking at each other to see where they both land after an amorous night at the dance club, at the discotheque.
This reminded me a lot of the interaction she has with Riley in the Left Behind DLC from the first game. It's very similar, like putting feelers out on both ends to see where each other are at.
This is like the best dialogue, right? This is exactly how I would approach a conversation. It feels borderline manipulative, right? But it's just human nature. It's like, how do you keep pushing the conversation so that you don't overstep and then, feel ashamed that the other person's not in the same place, but you just keep pushing it forward, poking it a little bit to see, are they on the same page? And the other person keeps giving ground until they find out that they're both on the same page. And so we have like a climactic ship moment by the end of this sequence. And so I love the dialogue, fantastically written and fantastically acted. But in this sequence, I love the grocery store. How about everyone else? Oh, wait. Let's back up. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'll shut up. My bad.
Before we get to the grocery store, right? They start talking about Joel, right? What do they talk about?
Yeah,
Joel is said to have punched Seth or accosted him, right?
Yep.
In some way. And Ellie is offended by this, and we don't know why. We don't know everything that's going on. And Dina's been poking at this too. She's like, that's the part that I didn't understand. Why did you get mad at Joel instead of Seth? And we see where she's at with Joel and how she has decided after that night where tensions were hot that she wants to invite him to watch 80s action movie because that's like their thing. Okay, who can relate to this? Because I just started binging 80s action movies and I totally get it.
I have not started yet, despite Shan's requests. He's been like, you should watch this and you should watch this. And I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But I've got a list of 80s action movies from Shan that I need to get on. I did watch Alien for the first time, which isn't like a strict action movie.
No,
but
that's
I watched
horror.
Alien for the first time.
Did you watch
like
Aliens after?
A few months ago. No, I haven't. Not yet. It was fairly recent. So again, still working on it. But Alien is a friggin' rad movie. I love that
Does
movie.
the guy with secret kung fu count?
It's not 80s, is it?
Is
There's no way.
I don't remember
That's a
when.
dollar store, a Chinese movie. Fantastic. But no,
Amazing.
it doesn't qualify.
Incredible movie.
No, okay. I just watched Rambo and I get it, right? This guy who's just like lost from the Vietnam War, he's just trying to find a place for himself. He's been abandoned by his country and he's a vagabond that is not wanted in a small town. And so, spoilers, by the way, this small town.
Okay, the
sheriff
movie's like 40
decides-
years old. I think we can get away with the spoilers.
Okay, spoilers. I just watched it for the first time. I think
Luke,
people
sing the
our
spoiler
age
song.
are not watching these movies. All right.
I haven't seen it.
No, I watched it like forever ago.
So this sheriff is like, get the F out of my town because we don't like people like you. But he's not breaking the law. He just wants to eat breakfast. And so the cop aggresses Rambo and puts him in jail. And then he gets like PTSD, traumatic flashbacks, shell shock, right? He like has to get out of there. And then he goes into the forest and he goes Rambo. This is like the epitome of an 80s action movie. It is a very small premise to an inciting incident, and then it's just action. This is what makes an 80s action movie glorious.
It's also what makes John Wick.
This is why
man.
John Wick is incredible, is because it went back to the formula.
Yeah.
You didn't need to know more about John Wick than he wanted to murder people because his dog died. Spoilers, I'm sorry. But
spoilers. Yeah.
Spoilers. But that, like, I used to think that there had to be like a sophistry about like all movies. There had to be character conflict. There had to be something that you could analyze. Oh, that makes action movies worse most times. You just need the action. And
Sometimes you just want to watch someone kill some people, and that's okay. I was going to agree with you. I think that, yeah, I can totally see why that would be a thing that Joel and Ellie would bond over, is they like watching these action movies that are just cathartic. And I had the thought too, where it's like they see so much violence in their normal life that like, why would this be something that they would enjoy? But I think that there's a difference between the kind of violence that they experience in The Last of Us, which is a piece of media, but for these characters, it's their world. Like, there's a difference between that kind of violence for survival and really horrible, gratuitous, violent things happening, and then something like Rambo, where it's like, he's in the jungle and he's just shooting people and it's great. And like, I think that it's not the violence that's like, why would they want that? It's a different kind of like, almost for them, it might seem almost comedic, where it's a fun, like, oh, he's just killing guys.
Rambo also
Right.
kills like entire armies by himself. Like he's more than just
So he's a lot like Joel in that way.
right? Like he's completely invincible, he's unstoppable until he isn't. Spoiler.
maybe these 80s movies will always remind her of Joel, not even just because they did it together, but because all of those 80s action heroes, like they were basically is Sylvester Stallone or Schwarzenegger. But isn't that who Joel is to Ellie?
It's
He's-
sweet.
He's the prototype action hero to her. That's beautiful. Okay, while we are in that sequence where we're talking about these 80s action movies, we also come across a Christmas note from a little child named Eric.
Eric, you wrote it.
That's my name.
Hey, he's me.
It's me.
Did anybody else read this note? Want to talk about it?
Hang on, let me consult
Yeah.
my notes.
It was forgettable for me. I read it and don't remember at all.
I
That's
saw
hard
that.
Because
to not
I
take
don't care about
personally.
Eric.
I saw that Eric
Yeah.
wrote it, and I was like, "Nah, I'm good."
Ugh, gross.
Come on,
Yep.
nah.
So little boy Eric, his father, he's having a hard time and he often isolates himself in his room. And little Eric just wants Christmas. And
That's all I want.
there's not much to this note. I don't know necessarily what it adds, but I was curious. After society collapses, do you carry on tradition?
Like, do you
Is that
still
important?
teach your kids about Santa Claus post-apocalypse?
Or do you leave that part out?
Yeah,
Because
is
it's
there
too
a Santa
hopeful.
clicker now.
That's
Yeah.
the clicker.
It's the Robo Santa
Yeah.
from Futurama. That's
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah. But I think that there's something intrinsic about humans that want to carry on tradition, whether or not they do the whole Santa thing. I think finding, especially in a community like Jackson, where they're starting to thrive in the apocalypse, they've got a system, they're able to do fun things. Ellie's notebook, she sketches and draws, and she's got like an easel in her room. She paints a little bit. And later we learn about like other people having hobbies. And so these people are able to live and enjoy things about life that a lot of people aren't able to in this broken world. And so I think with that comes a desire to pass things on to your kids. They're having kids. They want to keep on their traditions. Like, oh, we did this when I was a kid and it was really important to me. I think that's a very human thing, even in the apocalypse, to want to do.
But then we end up continuing along and we find a dead moose who has been eviscerated.
Nice.
Who loved this imagery?
Nice.
Tore up.
So gross.
Okay. My favorite, though, was the sound, the foliage effects of walking through the blood in the snow. Did anybody else hear that?
Incredibly detailed.
It was a squishy blood sound
it was
in snow.
super Dexter-y to me. This was screaming Dexter vibes. Like, I want a Dexter ASMR channel that just plays grotesque, like blood and tissue squishing sounds. And especially if you've watched the new season of Dexter, like the reboot with him in the winter, flash forward, spoiler Dexter. But it's
Nobody's
in the winter,
watching.
and in the first episode, this was just screaming. The first episode, there is a beautiful stag that gets killed, and it's a white stag, and it's in the snow, and Dexter doesn't shoot it, but it gets shot, and there's blood everywhere, like spilling onto the white snow and leaving this huge puddle. And the imagery is so beautiful and grotesque at the same time. And this was super screaming Dexter vibes to me because the sound, the sloshing and kind of the thickness and it's really satisfying and effectively grotesque. Chef's kiss to the design team on that moment.
It's gross.
So
And it was totally someone's job to make all those sounds.
Someone spent weeks on that.
Sounds with different toppings.
Okay, so
now, does the fuzzy navel snow cone sound any different than the peach strawberry? That's a bad example. Peach strawberry is fuzzy navel. Move on. My bad.
Know your fruits, Eric.
My bad. I messed up, you
know
guys.
your fruits. You better know your fruits. If you don't, you'll be eaten in your sleep. All right. So within this store sequence, we are finally revealed that Dina does not know that Ellie is immune. Now, this is obvious, but at the same time, I didn't think about it, right? Is that the same for everyone else?
Why Dina wouldn't be aware of it, you mean?
Well, like,
are you talking about when they go into the supermarket and they put on their gas masks? Because Ellie doesn't need to wear a gas mask, but they both put one on. And so I think that's a good moment of visual storytelling to be like, Ellie is definitely keeping this part of her a secret, because if she wasn't, she would just walk in there and not care.
Right. But like, I actively, like, I just wasn't thinking about it, right? Like, we get all the way to this point and she put on the gas mask and I'm like, oh yeah, she doesn't know. It's like, obviously she's not telling anybody, but I just wasn't thinking about it.
I think it's a really cool, subtle way in the game to describe that Ellie is holding this secret in. It's super subtle, makes a lot of sense, makes sense to the player, but it fits perfectly in this world that, if she's hiding it, these are the actions she's going to take.
And then mechanically in the story, this sets up what she does later when they're in their dialogue, when they're being more emotionally vulnerable, using the same trope where it's like in a horror anything, right? Where if you are less clothed, that indicates that you are more emotionally vulnerable. And that's when their defenses are down. Usually there's an action sequence or a jump scare, right? Because that's just what you do. But like, this is the moment where she reveals, oh, these chemical scars are covering up a bite mark and I'm immune. So really, like, story writing wise, reminding you at this moment that she's immune is because it would have been more jarring to just suddenly bring it up at that moment. And there's like a rule of threes that you just like need to keep bringing this up so that it doesn't feel like you're just inserting it randomly. It makes it feel more intentional. Yeah. Anyway, that's how I felt about it.
Shan has a lot of feelings, but no empathy.
Yeah.
No empathy.
You guys remember feelings, right?
Yeah, I remember feelings. I have feelings every day. Wait, you're telling me you don't have feelings?
I'm saying that I put up a wall. Okay. So while they are after this store sequence, they've talked a few times about Eugene setting the groundwork, foreshadowing that we're going to need Dina's electronic skills that she's learned from Eugene. And that we find out that Eugene used to be a part of the Fireflies. Now, I just want to hammer home that the Fireflies are shitty.
I knew you were going to say that. I was waiting for you to
Total disdain for Fireflies and Meryl Streep.
I'm really glad that you reminded us, because I'm always unclear about where you stand with the Fireflies. So it's good to be reminded.
This elucidates it, right? For anybody who is still on the fence, they come back in part 2 and they're like, just so you know, Joel is still right. And the Fireflies were extremists and they did a lot of stupid things. And they convinced Eugene to leave his family. Same with Tommy, by the way. Tommy was convinced to leave Joel. And they are moral absolutists, but in the wrong way. And they take it to extreme ends, violent ends. That's how you know that I guess that's what Joel did too. Took it to the most extreme violent ends.
Like, there's double standard here.
There is double standards here, but like, yours was like, I want my form of democracy, so I'm going to kill the authoritarians.
Yeah,
right?
That's where the Fireflies lost me. Like, I don't think at its core, their goal isn't a bad goal. I think government and structure would probably be good for society post-apocalypse, because people should be stronger together. Where the Fireflies lose me is then they're basically terrorists about how they want to set up government. Like,
it's terrorism.
It's terrorism. Like, okay, I get you fighting against Fedra, but they also killed tons of completely innocent civilians, and not just because they're in the crosshairs. It's like, fall in line with democracy or else. It's really not like them wanting to reinstate American government. Okay, cool. But the way you go about it matters, and their way is terrorism.
Right.
So the
just
means
remember
do not
that
justify
Gandhi
the end.
accomplished a lot more with a lot less violence.
And Joel was really violent. He has a violent past, but Joel was really violent because that was the only way he was getting out of that hospital.
In the amount of compressed time that he was given. Frenetic situation.
He didn't go to the hospital to kill the Fireflies. He was there to save Ellie, right? He was there for her, which is a big difference.
Right. And Eugene, he has a wife and a family, and they're all like, hey, do you want to come kill people for democracy? He's like,
no.
Yeah, why take care of
where
my
do I
wife and
sign?
children?
Yeah.
I'm glad he's reformed. He made a place for himself in this version of self-determination that Maria has established. I think it's a more ideal form. There's a lot more autonomy involved and a lot less extremism. And so I'm with Maria. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Shan loves socialism. Shan is socialist.
Well, depends on the size of the community, right? You get down to like, there's a couple hundred of us.
Yeah, we're going there. Let's go.
You have a different form of government depending on the size of the community, because
I'd like to jump in and
just
shut this down.
No,
shut it down.
I'm just saying that there are a relative amount of things that you have to give up at scale. And at the scale that they live in, this is working for them. And they make a case for that. I think that's fair.
I think in this situation, Jackson has found a way to live peacefully as a community. And
it's because they have to give up more than you would than in a community at scale.
I think what really makes Jackson work, I agree with you. I think scale has something to do with it, but it's the principles, right? Like, if everybody looked out for their neighbor, if everybody gave a crap, if each other had food and were fed and were safe and protected, then communities would take care of themselves. They would take care of each other. And the role of government is diminished when communities take care of each other. And so I agree with you. At scale, Jackson makes a lot of sense.
Okay, imagine the island of Lost and them setting up free capitalism, free market capitalism.
Hold on. So time out. That's basically what Sawyer did. Sawyer had his stash.
Did it work?
It did
Sawyer
not.
Made off great.
Arguably, made everybody pissed off at him.
For greed always works.
He was testing something and it didn't work. All right.
So anyways, the next part.
So they go down, they find a bunch of weed. It's probably skunk by that point. I don't know. I've never tried it, but I do want to give some plaudits to the gas mask bong, because I thought that was brilliant.
Oh, so fun. So good.
Very innovative.
Yeah. Loved it. I love that. Who was it? Was it Dina that's like, that guy is a genius? It reminds me of New Girl. Every time Nick talks about that guy who's in Silicon Valley and the snow globe in Parks and Recreation.
Smartest guy I
Martin
know.
Starr is
Smartest
the
guy
actor.
now, right?
Yeah.
What?
Martin Starr is the actor.
Martin Starr. All right.
Also
Martin
in
Starr
Freaks and Geeks.
in New Girl, Nick refers to him as the smartest guy he knows. And every time he uses that refrain is whenever he does something akin to like, he does something stupid that gets women. Nick loves the things that impress him, like the panty droppers, or like that's what impresses Nick, and that's what makes him the smartest guy. That's what the bong is to Dina. Smartest guy I know.
The bong genius, making a bong with a gas mask.
But finally, dialogue-wise, we've interweaved all of these complicated paths between Ellie and Dina, and we have arrived at the conclusion that they both do like each other and they are going to go for it. And Jesse finds out, and it's been a week. I think it's somewhat fair. It's like Friends, right? Like if you're on break.
We were
does it
on a
count?
break.
Right? Arguably, yes, but like the bro code, I don't know. You know what I'm saying. How much time is allowed depends on how long they were together.
So Jesse, when he learns about the kiss, gives him, not really gives his blessing, but Jesse's like, yeah, it's fine. Like, we broke up. It's no big deal.
But that's what you would say if you just want to keep the relationship, right? You only have a few friends in Jesse.
Is it really fine, Jesse, or are you just saying that because Ellie's definitely the coolest person?
I can't wait to talk more about Jesse because I love Jesse.
I think Jesse's great. Such a really good addition in this game to round out the roster of characters, and he's got such a nice story arc, and I agree. He's awesome.
Right. Okay, so Jesse comes down, he discovers the situation, and then he finds out, oh, is this weed? But he reveals that Tommy and Joel are missing on their patrol for over an hour. So you can infer from this that they have been caught up in the Horde and they have been pushed out of their patrol to survive. Then we go over to Abby.
Back to Abby's perspective.
Okay, so the Horde. Who loves the Horde?
I was a little taken back of why there's a Horde in this spot where the setting of Jackson is supposed to be more remote, that not a lot of infected, to have regular patrols. I wanted to know, where does this Horde coming from?
Like why the Horde migration takes them here.
Exactly.
You
Especially
see
right after a snowstorm when they should be slowed down.
So you see when Dina and Ellie are on patrol that their post only gets hit once a month. And so that's the same for all of their posts, I would assume, is that they have these strategic locations and the patrol only goes out once a month to clear out any new infected. So there can be gaps where infected break through. That's my argument. But we've seen in like The Walking Dead, hordes can build up and accumulate from other towns. And then you just need like one large sound to go off. And then they all just move as a herd towards that sound. And it just becomes a whole thing. That's how I imagine this Horde building up.
Snowball rolling down a hill type effect. The bigger the Horde just continues to breed a bigger Horde because of the sound.
Yeah, they're following the moose.
One thing that I really liked about this part is when you start off as Abby, and you had just like last time you were playing as Abby, you had to take out a couple of infected, not a big deal, but you were stealthing around and whatever. And then you start off this chapter and you drop down into an area and you see like 2 or 3 infected and you're like, oh, I'm going to sneak around. I'm going to try to get one of them. And then you get one of them. And I don't know if this is true, but I died and had to do this part again. So the same thing happened to me twice, but you get one of them. And then all of a sudden, like one sees you. And then in like 3 seconds, you just hear screams in all directions. And so it's a situation where it's a great, like the developers pull the rug from under you, where you're expecting this situation where it's like, oh, I'm going to sneak around. I'm going to get a couple. I'm going to pick them off one by one, like I've done in the past. And you get like 1 or 2 of them. And then all of a sudden it's infected everywhere. And the situation completely changes and you can't fight. You have to run. And it's just, I really loved that subversion of my expectations and what I was expecting to happen as part of the game. And then the sounds of the Horde as you're running just all around you. Cause it's like, you can't even directionally place them. I'm playing with your headphones. It sounds like they're around you, to the side, in front, above. Like the voices almost sound like they're coming from inside your head. It's just noise in all directions, and it's incredibly tense. Yeah.
The infected are inside your head.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought the way that this chapter opens is just awesome.
Very few times in gaming history have I ever felt like so much adrenaline in such at such a frenetic pacing. And it's twice in this game. And we'll talk about the other time later. We all know. And then like Resident Evil 4 opening sequence.
Oh yeah.
But this is the first time I've played The Last of Us Part 2. I think it's my fourth time where I haven't died. I'm playing on Grounded Plus, so I have to give myself applause for that.
Wow.
But I also just know the path. So
Brag.
it's more like I'm cheesing it.
Tucker's playing on super duper easy.
Narrative
Yes,
mode,
super
story
duper
mode.
easy.
On-
That's
on
how
baby
this sad
mode.
dad rolls.
Yeah.
With the slow motion on.
And aim
No, but-
assist.
No, aim assist is the bane of my existence.
Whatever. It's Tucker's favorite thing. Baby mode enabled.
I do have a theory though that like I am a basic bitch just as much as I was the first time I played the game. And I just have to take it up to Grounded Plus because I have all the weapons and I just want it to be at the same difficulty level as playing on normal the first time. So I'm not an experienced player. I just want an equal difficulty to when I was bad at it. I'm not elite. No, that's not what I'm saying. All right. So I love this sequence, but highly controversial moment. Joel and Tommy come in. They've been chased by this horde. They save Abby. Okay, so when this game came out, I was on media lockdown, didn't see any trailers, didn't know anything about it. Played it in 3 days, thought it was the best game I've ever played. Still stand by that. Saw online one of the first things that people hated was, why would Joel save Abby? That's out of character. And the whole story sucks. And they don't know how to write the story because nobody's making character choices based on the first game.
I think it totally is in
Incorrect.
character because, first of all, yes, he had a dark past from the beginning of the apocalypse. But think about when Joel dies and you go to the house and you go to walk up to the house and you see flowers and you see this whole memorial set in front of the house by the community. He clearly cares about people. And whether or not he had a dark past, he has really turned himself around and people adore him. He is taking care of
Like
The-
that fundamental question of what's the value of a human? What's the value of a person? Are they just evaluated by the sum of all the wrong things that they did? And I would argue that's a terrible way to give people value. So the idea that Joel wouldn't save her, I think you haven't been paying attention to Joel's character. You haven't been paying attention to his arc. Like, if Joel wasn't a redeemable person, maybe. But the fact that we've spent all this time with him, he's put himself on the line a lot for other people, specifically Ellie. That's why we spent the whole first game watching Joel regain that humanity that he was trying so hard to run away from. And like Emerlie pointed out, at his funeral, we see the after effect of that, becoming a member of the community, building relationships again. The idea that Joel wouldn't save Abby, I think, is silly. You haven't been paying attention to Joel this whole time. He's growing. He's becoming a member of the community again. He's found a family that he's willing to fight for and lay down his life for. So yeah, I think it's perfectly in character for him to try to save this person. Clearly, over this most recent 4-year time lapse, he's endeared himself to an entire community of people that are now chosen family.
So I agree with everything that Luke and Emerlie said. Outside of just Joel's character development from the first game in the last 4 years, taking people in is one of Jackson's core values. This is what they do. And it is immediately shown when Tommy invites Abby back. It says, hey, we have this community, come over, kind of see what it's all about. And
They
Joel,
are
if he-
careful. Based
are
on the dam in part 1, they are careful.
But yeah, so it's about taking people in. I mean, this is just in the outskirts. So it's, hey, what are you doing here? Hey, we are a friendly community. We're not like the hunters. We're not like, these other groups that are there to pillage. It's, we are building a real community. And I think that's Jackson's core value. And Joel, to live in Jackson for as long as he does, he has to become part of that community or else he's going to be kicked out. That's just innate of how Jackson has survived.
Yeah. Also from a story perspective, there's something in storytelling that's called the save the cat moment. Like if you want to endear an audience to a character, then they save the cat from the tree. And I think that this is, for people who maybe didn't play the first game, this is a good save the cat moment for Joel, where the character endears and starts to view Joel in a positive light. And
here's a perfect example. Aladdin steals the bread and gives it to a kid.
Yeah, that's a save the cat moment. Stealing shouldn't do that, but he gives it to so that he can have some and give some to the kid. And so with that, with you being on Joel's side after this save the cat moment, I think that it also makes what comes next a lot more emotionally jarring and effective and upsetting.
Okay, so I'm going to do my due diligence. I'm going to make an argument I just don't want to leave any stones unturned because I don't want any yes buts. All right. So we're going to take all of his most significant moments from part 1 and put it against the test of part 2 and see if it holds up. All right. So in part 1, Joel and Tommy escape with Sarah and they leave the family on the side of the road. Why did he do that? And does that match this test?
I think the reason why Joel did that, he says while it's happening, Tommy goes, they've got a kid with him. He says, so do we. Keep driving. Nothing is more important to Joel than Sarah.
Does he have Ellie with him now? No.
Nope.
So he has nothing. He doesn't have his own family. Like Tommy can take care of himself. We know this. And that's never a direct concern of Joel's. He doesn't have a kid to protect. And so it's not adding risk to someone he is actively protecting. So that is bunk. All right. Joel doesn't want to bring Ellie to the Fireflies at first. Now, that is self-preservation. He just wants to survive for himself. It's not that he's trying to save Ellie, so he just pragmatically wants to avoid conflict for him and for Tess and for Ellie. So we know by character choice that he's not willing to create new risk for all parties involved, but they're already in the Horde, and so is Abby. So that doesn't meet the test. All right. Joel drives into a bandit in Pittsburgh. What does this say about his character, and does it meet the test?
He's got Ellie with him, doesn't he, when he drives?
Yeah.
He has Ellie.
No, he's got Ellie with him, and it's not just that. Joel knows what's going on.
Yeah.
He knows
Right.
that that's not someone who actually
Yeah, he
needs
knows
help.
this is a trap.
He ain't even hurt.
Yeah.
Right. So is there any subterfuge in Abby right now?
I don't
You're
think
going to
she's a
have to
malicious
define
threat.
Subterfuge.
Chiron.
Chiron.
intent to
Yeah,
deceive.
she's not being sneaky
Thank
here.
you.
And there's
She doesn't have malicious intent. She's trying to survive. She doesn't even know this is Joel. It's not like Joel can see, oh, she's a bad actor and I need to avoid her because I might die if I take her in. Running into the guy in Pittsburgh is not the same thing as saving Abby. That's bunk. All right. I think one of the more important moments from part 1 is Joel gets mad at Henry for abandoning him. Now, what does this say?
I think I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I think it shows that the importance that Joel places on sticking together for survival reasons, right?
Right.
Like he's like, Henry needed you and you left. I needed your help and you left. And in this moment, he sees Abby and she's like, she needs my help. I can't just leave.
Right.
But isn't he being a hypocrite, though? Because at the beginning of the game, he was saying, oh, we have a kid, we have to keep going. But then he gets mad at Henry when he also has a kid
No,
and he needs to keep
because the moment that he forgives Henry is when Henry says, you would have done the same because he has Sam.
going. True.
And then he just completely lets it go. So we know that he believes in solidarity for survival, but protecting a child or family is more important and it forgives you. But again, in this moment, he's not protecting Ellie. So I think this is actually one of the most tests. It means that he should protect Ellie. He protect Ellie's there and he needs her above Abby. I think that actually almost gives the whole thing away, but we can keep going, right?
And Abby is a girl, so I think if it was an older male, he probably wouldn't have cared as much.
I think that I want to get to that argument in a different way. You don't have to get into this one so much, but like Joel's hurt and then puts himself into danger to go save Ellie while she's being attacked by David. So we know he will put himself into danger when he doesn't even have to be in danger in order to save somebody. Then by the end of part 1, when Ellie is in danger, he has the chance to walk away. And that's when he's met with his ultimate test of, are you going to be a father and are you going to protect the vulnerable? Now, I think this is literally his most defining archetype. He is a protector in addition to being a survivor. It is who he's always been, but it is literally the most dynamic thing about him by part 1. If you didn't learn that he would protect the vulnerable by the end of part 1, then you completely missed the point.
You weren't paying attention. Yeah.
Joel would absolutely protect somebody who's vulnerable. And in addition to that, being a father and seeing some woman who is somebody else's daughter, he wants to protect her because he understands the stakes for someone else.
Which in Abby's case is really ironic.
Yeah,
Just he doesn't know that out there. Yeah,
he doesn't know that about him. That's the unfortunate twist, right? That's what makes it so poetic and so tragic.
Dramatic irony.
I got to go protect this girl so she can get back to her dad.
But it's built, it's baked into, like you really eloquently laid out, Shan, like it's baked into his psychology. We have so much supporting evidence to see why Joel would have acted this way. It's not because he's a happy-go-lucky, I gotta save everybody person. That's not it. His psychology is such that of course he would save Abby in this scenario, in this very specific case, because it passes all of these other tests. We've already had the experience of seeing this.
It's a paternal instinct and it's pragmatic because it enhances his own survival. It's not that he's trying to keep her away from Jackson. The Horde is coming. He's in the Horde. He's already trying to survive. Having one more person
who's capable
does help them.
Not to quote Lost again,
right.
But live together, die alone. Been a Lost heavy episode.
Wow.
It's always going to be Lost heavy. If we don't learn to live together, we're going to die alone. I can't do Jack's voice.
That was really good.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
no,
that was
can't do it
basically Jack.
Maybe Joel saw this horde of infected coming and he saw a buff girl and was like, I need her on my team.
And she's so buff. Like,
yeah, it's exactly
the first thing anybody
and
noticed.
An infected Abby is terrifying.
Yeah.
That's a buff infected runner.
She's freaking buff.
Yes.
I just want to say, we're going to get to the other argument of why people made this argument, because I think that there was a different grievance.
Because
and
cynicism is easy and lazy.
Right? Like, I think if you didn't try hard enough, you could make that argument. And I understand where it came from. Having focused so hard on the character psychology and been more inside these characters' heads than I've ever tried, like, I know he would do this. I've never known it more than I have now. But we're going to do the work on that as well. So after surviving the Horde, okay, so here's another thing that I slightly questioned. They are pretty forthcoming on giving up their names. I know that as a story device that just reveals to Abby that these are the people that she's looking for.
So it's funny.
Anyway.
So Tommy's the one that gives up their names.
That's right. And that's in Tommy's character.
Yeah, that's in Tommy's character. I think Joel would have been much more protective.
Hesitant. That's fair.
Yeah, I do want to make one quick note of one last thing of the Horde before we move on to this part. There's the part where you're playing as Abby, and then Abby fights alongside with Joel and Tommy as they're fighting off some infected. And I don't know if it was intentional or if I'm just bad at games, but like playing that part of the game while you're playing alongside Joel, I could barely get a kill in. Joel was mopping the floor with those infected. I was like, whenever he was like, oh, I'm going to get this guy. And then a bullet would whiz by and shoot him to the ground. And so I thought it was cool to watch Joel like be a badass and kill everything from a third person perspective when you're not in control of him. It's just like, is this how everyone sees Joel all the time? He's just like this like murder machine, just killing the infected left and right. And I'm here as Abby, just like can't get a bullet in edgewise because Joel's doing my job for me. I thought that was an
I
interesting
just start
thing.
blasting.
Yeah.
There would have been
Blast it.
incredible ludonarrative dissonance to say that Joel is like the archetypal superhero. And then to say like, but when you're not controlling him, he can only pick off like one clicker out of 10, right? Like that would have been a huge disservice. And so what they had to do was throw 20 of them at you so that he could pick off half of them.
That's exactly what it was. I thought it was a cool little, I really enjoyed just watching Joel work from an outside perspective.
And then like, here I am just like running in circles until he kills all of them.
Yeah. He's like, Joel's got it covered. Yeah.
It's like, I don't have enough ammo for this. I'm playing Grounded Plus. Occasionally like punching them, going aggro. I love aggro Abby. I love that she has melee as her base, like her attack loop. I love that. It distinguishes her fantastically from Ellie.
Of course she does. Have you seen her arms and her shoulders?
Yeah, I love it.
I keep harping on how ridiculously built she is. I'm so jelly.
Putting in those burritos that she's stacking each day.
Pure protein.
Right?
It's just HGH. extract.
Hey,
Growth hormone.
Performance enhancing burritos.
Oh, man. All right. After that, they get into a room with Abby's friends, and I love how this scene is directed. One of the best directed scenes out of both games. And just how like the camera navigates the scene to indicate like the shifting power. And after they give up their name and like everybody knows who Joel is. And so there's just like a palpable tension in the music shifts and like you can feel their unease. Like what else did people notice about this?
I love how without all of her friends having a bunch of dialogue, they're still able to really effectively tell you who these people are and a bit about their psychology. Like there's that one person with like the short haircut and the kind eyes, and it looks like they're on board with Abby, but they look more like peacemaker person. And then there's other people who very clearly have more aggressive body language. I just like watching back over that scene, because I went back and rewatched that scene just on the YouTube, like movie version of it. So I could pause and watch people's facial expressions. They do a really good job of doing a lot of character storytelling and context with them without even giving them a whole ton of dialogue.
They also like with the camera, they create a lot of movement in the scene. Even when the characters aren't moving, the camera is. And I believe it's like circling and it's making you feel claustrophobic, like he's surrounded. And so you feel trapped. And so the camera is doing the work that of like making you feel trapped because that's how they are. Like once they learn that that this is Joel, that is what they're doing at the group is that they have that. Like they have decided in solidarity. I love the body language of how they're acting like, okay, we know who this is. We are not letting them leave. What are you going to do? And we'll watch the doors. Like I love all of the non-spoken body language in this scene.
You can just see all of Abby's friends as soon as Tommy's like, my name's Tommy, is my brother Joel. And they all like, their eyes get a little wide. They all sit up and some of them are looking at each other. And it's just this immediate shift in body language.
They take an active stance. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because before they're slouched and they're very passive. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is happening. It's here. What it's right now.
Too far ahead. But I love when Joel is talking to Abby and he realizes what's going on. And he's like, it's this, okay, I obviously hurt somebody that this person cares about. And I can't remember his exact words, but he's like, just say whatever speech you're going to say and let's get on with it. Like, it's just completely accepted. Like, this was bound to happen at some point. Let's get it over with. I just love Abby's reaction to it. It was like, no, you don't get to rush this. And it's just like, this is going to be long and arduous and I'm going to get my money's worth here.
One of the things I took away from this part is when they come out and like they realize who Joel is, Abby comes out, shoots him in the knee with a shotgun. That leg, it's like falling off basically. But then even Joel in this incredibly incapacitated state, two guys come up and they pin him to the wall. And then Owen is back there and has got a shotgun trained on him, while Abby is talking to him. It's like 2 guys to restrain him and then 1 guy to make sure he doesn't get up. And it's like, that's how you treat Joel. That's the level of threat that he is, that even though one of his legs is basically useless, they're like, you hold him, don't take that shotgun off of him because we know what this guy is capable of. And I had the thought that I was like, this is what Marlene should have done in the first game. When she was trying to keep Joel, she has 1 guy escort him out. It's like, that's not enough people. And it's like, but Abby's crew, they get it. They've got him pinned to the wall. They're not letting him go anywhere. They
They've never met him, but they've seen what he's done.
Yeah.
They're not taking any chances. That's why she brought an army.
Yeah, some of them are former Fireflies, and so I wonder how many of them lost
Yeah.
people in the hospital. But definitely they highlight Abby's dad because he was so beloved in the Firefly community, and they felt like he could have brought the infected to a halt. They think that he could have fixed things with Ellie.
And then just for context, Abby's dad is the doctor that was going to save the world that Shan shot in the crotch a bunch of times. Yeah.
So many times. So many.
Right. It's like, here's the thing, right? I'm playing out the sequence and it's like, okay, we had an ick factor and mine were usually at 0. The doctor was like, okay, he has a scalpel. What's he going to do? And so the ick factor was a little higher on that because it's like, technically he's not a threat, but he's still between me and Ellie and he's going to try to stop me.
Also,
So-
the only thing he says is, we're going to save so many lives. And then you just pump him full of lead.
Well, they insert dialogue that wasn't there in part 1, and maybe they should have put it there in the remake just to tie up some loose ends. But when I'm playing part 1 and I think, really, this is the catalyst for all of part 2, I want Abby to earn this kill. Because if she's going to get it,
I'm going to make her dad's death as traumatic as possible.
That's exactly
she's
it.
just-
Like, she's not going to
Right?
have
Because-
anything to bury after I'm done with
Yeah, the
Exactly.
corner Firefly is like, sorry, Abby, I know you're like 14. Your dad's genitals were blown off and you got bled out.
Here's this jar of human soup that used to be your father. We're pretty sure it's him anyways. We can't really tell.
We cannot.
I think the technical term is Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
Swiss cheese.
It's exactly right. Like, if she's coming for Joel and I can't stop it, I want there to be a reason. And
Oh, is
and I
that
gave
how
her
you
one.
justified your violence to the
gotta make it
doctor?
worth it.
Right. Yeah. Everybody else got a normal bullet to the head and he got sprayed.
Wow. Look, you're so good at enhancing the narrative, Shan. I see what you did there. You really motivated
needed-
Abby.
I needed to connect the dots in my own
you
head.
did.
Right. Like no other former Firefly came after Joel, only Abby. So there had to be a disproportionate cost. Pound of flesh.
Joel didn't kill Abby's dad. Shan did. Yeah.
And so I think she was justified, but only in my version of the game.
Abby's coming for you next, Shan.
No, but I don't think that she has it in her heart after this game is over, but we'll figure that out, which gets me off the hook. So thank goodness.
Yeah. So you're fine.
So I love that you don't get to rush this. And
The
she
golf club.
uses a golf club. Okay. So why the golf club? Does it mean anything? Or is it just pure character motivation that is an extension of who she is?
So the golf club is really interesting to me because it's not only the device she uses to just beat the crap out of Joel, and I'm going to call it torturing Joel, but it's also the
Right.
device she uses to kill him. And so it's this kind of twofold weapon is she has to hold it in a specific way, hit Joel within a specific ways, not to kill him, but just to make him feel as much pain as possible. So for me, it's just she has the power from beginning to end of just, I control your life with this one object.
I think it's also a choice of the setting because you're in Jackson or Jackson Hole and there's these rich houses up on the hill. And what would they have at this rich house? Golf clubs. So I think that also plays into the setting of this really nice, lavish house that they're in.
Yeah, I was going to say she probably picked those up from the nice country house. Someone had those on hand. It's also an instrument, like, as opposed to Negan's baseball bat, which is horrifying in its own way. It's a melee instrument that isn't designed to be immediately lethal. Like, this is a golf club. I don't even know what kind of, like, I don't know if it's a 9-iron. I don't know enough about golf to say, like, I immediately
Never golfed in your
recognize
life.
this is
Yeah.
one.
Like
Neither
a
have I.
24 iron, middle striker.
24
putt,
karat
putt,
iron.
Yeah.
4 carat iron. Yeah, that
I
sounds right.
hate everybody
A putt
so
putt.
much right now.
Everybody got the terminology exactly right except Tucker.
Exactly
Except for
right.
Tucker.
Except for
But
Tucker.
like clearly this thing isn't going to kill him right away. Like she had
Yeah.
chosen this out, but I don't think like she had some emotional attachment to it. I think like Emerlie said, it was practical because it was around this ritzy area where they were, and it wasn't particularly lethal. It was designed for maximum pain.
Okay, so she didn't bring a torture weapon with her, which is interesting because it is premeditated. She got a posse
Super
with her.
premeditated.
But it also still indicates that she's impulsive. So she didn't know how she was going to torture him. I think she just wanted to improvise when she got there, wanted to find something when she got
So
there.
I would argue that I think she's there just to kill him. Like when she's talking to Owen, how are we going to get him out get him out of Jackson? I think she's trying to think of this is going to be a quick thing. We have to move fast because he has all these other people around him. But then Joel gets served to her on a silver platter, and I think she's more opportunistic of it. Like, oh, I'm going to really make the most of this. Then this has been killing me for years. Now I get to take my time and really let him have it. Yeah.
But like you said before, is she tries to talk to him about it and he's like, just get it over with. And she's like, well, you don't get to say that this is over with. I'm going to drag this out as much as possible. So I do think it was an impulsive thing that she did.
I think she always knew if she found him outside of a community, she would have tortured him. But why wouldn't she have? But I don't think she ever thought she would find him this way, to your point. So she was just expecting to just have him out and then move on. But we do know that she's very impulsive. And when blinded by rage and vengeance, that is when she's most impulsive. In fact, I love that they established this immediately with her character. When she finds out that Mel is pregnant, she immediately runs off on her own without a plan. She doesn't always make a plan when she's blinded by rage, and we're going to see that over and over again. I love that. All right, so how did you react the first time that she took Joel out?
Devastated.
Yeah, so I had the initial reaction like, Joel probably deserved this. I'm devastated because I have this emotional attachment from the first game, but I wasn't surprised.
I had a very similar reaction. Like I said, when Abby and Owen are up on the hill looking over at Jackson, and they said, how do we get him out? That's when I started to suspect. So for the previous, that happens almost 40 minutes, an hour before you get to this point. And so for the last little while of the game, I was waiting for something like this to happen. But I also thought that Joel would get out of it and that maybe the rest of the game would be like Ellie and Joel trying to get away and outflank these people. So I was expecting something to happen to Joel, but I wasn't expecting him to die. And so that part, like when they blow off his leg and it's like, it becomes pretty clear that like he's not coming back from this. It was a very shocking, like unexpected twist for me. Even though I was expecting it, it still managed to surprise me.
For me, it really hits when Ellie shows up, right? Like, even though I was braced for this very probably potentially happening first time going through it, it's when you're Ellie and you show up and you sneak down the stairs to find Joel completely bloodied, battered, bruised. That's when the emotion really hit. Like, it's as shocking as it was, it's when I see it through Ellie's eyes that it completely devastates me. That's when it breaks my heart.
I think like I really wasn't expecting this to happen. Like I said before, I don't try to guess what's happening next. I love things to just unravel in its own time. And I really love I love and hated it, how they did what you didn't expect. Because for me, it's typically plot armor. These characters are always able to get out of these crazy situations. Something happens and they're able to get away from it. And I thought that Joel had plot armor because we've spent so long with his character, and surely he's going to be in more of this game. And then they did the unexpected. They killed off a main character. That I really did not see that coming. It makes me think of, I don't know if you guys have seen Watchmen. I love that movie. It's in I think it's in my top 3 favorites. But I really love the end of Watchmen where they did something similar, where you're like, oh, obviously they're going to save the day. The whole movie is them trying to get to Ozymandias, and they're trying to stop him from killing millions to save billions. And they get to Ozymandias and they're ready to fight him. And he's like, I've already done it. You guys are out in the middle of nowhere. It took you so long to get here. I've already dropped the bomb. Everyone is dead.
Right.
And it was just this, oh my gosh, like they didn't save the day. And I had that same reaction here. No one is here to save the day. I really didn't think they would go there.
Right. So I also want to point out that I think the episode of Breaking Bad named Ozymandias is the one that's rated a 10. It's for that reason. It's like, you're too late. My plan's, fait accompli.
I am not familiar with Ozymandias. What is that in reference to?
I think it's a comic character or something like that.
Mythology.
It's just like exactly what you're saying. The plan's already been finished.
I'm going to do more research into that because I didn't realize that there is a reoccurring theme here.
Somebody leave a comment and tell us how it is.
Yeah, tell us all about it.
Yeah.
Like, comment, and subscribe. Yeah.
I will Google this. Or did you think I was too stupid to know when I Googled it?
Are you Googleizer? Okay, so I rarely externalize my emotions while I'm playing games, and like without being able to control it, I yelled at the TV. I've never had such there was like no input lag between it happening and me reacting because it was so immediately visceral. I don't think a game has ever delivered an emotional punch to me that way, which I didn't realize Joel meant that much to me until that happened, which was just, again, beautiful that the team was able to accomplish that probably with everybody.
One thing I love about this scene when Ellie comes in and she's pinned down, I love the cinematography of it, of her looking at each individual person, just memorizing their faces of, okay, I'm going to kill you. 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 And she just yells it throughout the whole thing, begging them to stop and that they're going to die, which I just love that kind of little bit.
F you.
Exactly.
You're cool.
F you. I know.
And like we went over this in the first game, but like if you've experienced like a traumatic episode before, like whole like the world closing in on you sound wise and the ringing sound and like not even being able to hear yourself yelling,
Amazing.
Like that's real.
That's
incredible.
That's super real. That level of dissociation when something like that happens. I love that you don't hear the other people talking. You're just, Ellie keeps looking back from Joel's brutalized body to all the people she's going to kill. And that all the other sound cuts away. People are talking, but you hear the ringing. That blinder vision that you get on, that myopic field, everything just becomes the trauma. That's so effective. The design team deserves big kudos for that. It's also really good storytelling. It's also, like you said, for anyone who's gone through it, it's a little real. It's hardcore triggering, or at least it was for me. Like that moment is super very triggering in a traumatic way. So they did such a miraculous job with such a hard moment. I didn't yell at my screen while I was doing this, but I'm pretty sure if my face was being filmed while I was playing this, my mouth was just wide open. I was completely just agog at everything.
So I want to talk about the production of the whole games in general, how there's so many little details in everything that they did. Because you guys keep talking about how the sound, how they keep changing the direction of it and how it feels like it's coming in and you're claustrophobic with that. Or the blood in the snow, all of that. But also there's all the other things. There's the body language. We talked in a much previous episode from the first part about the layers of grass that you can see even underneath a car when you're hiding. I want to ask what you guys think when it comes to building a game like this, why this game excelled beyond other games. Is that because they have someone at top who is allowing the artists to be true artists and allowing them to really put a lot of time and effort into it? maybe they had the budget where other games haven't. I'm wondering why this one was able to over excel all the details.
Yeah, I think obviously budget is a big one, but I think also that Neil Druckmann has a very clear idea of what he wants from these games, and he's, not willing to compromise quality for time or to save time here. And because him and the other devs and all the people on the Last of Us team understand that those little things, you might not notice them one at a time, but you do notice them when they're gone. And so I think that they're very important to have in. And
Do you think Neil Druckmann was very hands-on, whereas other people probably wouldn't be in other games, where he was going around talking to each artist and saying, yes, you are allowed to spend more time on this? And maybe, I don't know. I've done a lot of big creative projects with a lot of people, a lot of artists. And I feel like it comes down to direction, the person at top who allows everybody. When I do competitions, I always tell other people, I'm like, hey, I trust you to do what you need to do. I don't like to micromanage with my teammates or friends. I just say, you know what? I trust you. You're amazing. Like, I can't wait to see what happens. So that's where my mind goes. Having to do these big creative projects is, I guess I appreciate that Neil Druckmann or other people who were at the top were allowing them to be the true artists that they are in their own crafts, because the sound design, the visual design, all of this stuff that comes together, that is a massive team. It is not a small team that's able to do that. It's a lot of different artists allowing themselves to do what they do best.
So if I had to guess, it's probably a generous pre-production where devs get to iterate and designers get to iterate. And once you're in full production, the director just takes control and puts the guardrails on it so that you can control scope. But in the pre-production, there are no rules.
anything goes.
Yeah. Because that also drives a lot of passion and energy, and the best stuff makes the cut, and you're getting ideas from everywhere.
You need designers to be able to dream big. You need the designers to be able to really follow their instincts and do their best work. And so from a directorial standpoint, like the best collaborators, at least I know I've worked with, have been the ones who know how to get the most out of people by yes, having vision and direction, but also letting them be themselves and do their best work and like really collaborate. So from a game directing standpoint, like you said, Shan, having parameters, having a clear vision, having a clear goal, I think all of that is crucial. All of that is important. And at some level, like you said, Emerlie, you've got to be able to trust people, that trust their skill sets, trust that they're going to do the very best that they can. And if you're all working towards the same vision, like they clearly had the budget, and they had very qualified and talented teams, but they were also given permission to go there.
I also think just in just effective world building in general, the devil's in the details. You look at like the Lord of the Rings universe, like Tolkien goes into ridiculous amount of details on seemingly, mundane things, but that's why it's such an effective world build, is because everything is accounted for. And I think that's similar to this. It's such an effective and immersive world to be into because the details are there. And that's what makes the letters that you find randomly about little baby Eric and Santa Claus, that adds very little to the story. It makes you maybe sympathize with Seth a little bit more, but it's just these little details that makes you feel like this world is real, and you're not just on this rail mowing down infected, mowing down other factions to get to your end goal.
I feel like as a creative myself, I'm much more passionate and I put way more effort into things when I really love what the project is. When it's just something that I'm being told to do, and I do cakes. When I'm doing a very basic cake, I'm like, I don't care. I'll just copy this image and I don't really care to be creative. But when it comes to other projects where I'm able to have creative freedom, I put so much energy into it. Even when I don't have to be thinking about it, I am sitting on it. I'm trying to come up with all of these ideas on ways to improve it. So maybe for me as a creative, I feel like maybe the story that they saw going into it inspired a lot of these creatives to put more energy and love into this project. And everyone came together and just created a beautiful game.
I think that's true. You can, if you care about what you're doing, the end product is almost always going to be better for it.
Yes.
Right? There's a big difference between, like, you can always feel when a game or a television show or movie has passion behind it. And that's what really gives you the energy to be absorbed with it. So
Yes.
I want to pull this back into the sequence where Joel is murdered. And I thought it was very powerful direction, probably from Neil. I don't know. Where when Ellie comes in, she never gets to hear Joel speak again. I'm captured by that every single time I watch this scene. It's like she just sees him bloodied and he doesn't ever say anything. Like he's already essentially dead. And so whatever was the last moment she had with him, which I think it's probably the moment that we see at the end of the game, that is already written in stone. And that's her final memory. Oh, I mean, her final conversation that she gets to have.
And I think that's really gut wrenching because in this moment, you think, especially even going into the game even more, you think her last moment was that fight that they had at the bar when Joel intervened with that fight. And you think that's where it's left off. Like, that's so gut wrenching. They never got to make up to each other.
I love that.
And I think like having it cut off right there where he doesn't say anything and you're like, oh, but they didn't have a moment together. He didn't get to say his feelings. And then you get all the way to the end of the game and you keep thinking the game's going to end, but then it doesn't. It's like Lord of the Rings. You keep thinking it's going to end and then they keep adding extra.
It just keeps,
what is that?
What happens after the climax is referred to as the denouement. And it's just the wrap up stuff.
Are you trying to say debutante?
I'm saying debutante.
No, it's like Lord of the Rings. You keep thinking it's going to end and then they're like, oh, and this happens. And then this happens. And I feel like they did that with The Last of Us too, where you get all the way to the end. She walks into the house that's empty and it's so gut wrenching. And you think this is the very end, but then it cuts to this heartfelt moment where you realize they did make up with each other. And that just really helps to drive home the ending and just makes you feel a little bit better on top of a horrible, sad ending.
Right. So you feel a little bit of this tension because like Ellie says, I want to watch the 80s action movie with him. And you're like, oh, she never gets that moment. So she never gets to make up with him. Goes on and on and on. Then literally the last scene you find out, oh, they have closure. And that is gorgeous. And it also the character moment that you find out that maybe there's a future for her. Like so many things culminating in that one sequence. But I really want to focus on the divisive nature of Joel's death because I have a theory on why it was so divisive. Now, we have anecdotes floating around there that a lot of people stopped playing when Joel died. We don't have to name names, but some people did, and others kept playing and loved it, and others just didn't see a point. Now, was researching some psychological theories of video games or just general psychological studies, and I came across two that I thought were a good dichotomy for this game. And one is wish fulfillment, and the other is narrative transportation theory. And so for wish fulfillment, I believe people play The Last of Us and they see Joel as the perfect archetype of a strong man, the machismo, and it provides an escapism for a character where they are given the autonomy to be a stronger version of maybe that play for narrative transportation, where we don't need to be Joel, but narrative transportation is the idea that you just go into a story because you want to be transformed by the story. You're going in with a blank slate and you're like, okay, please just teach me a moral, teach me an idea, give me a new perspective, teach me characters, just teach me something. And I'll go in with an open mind and I'll come out the other end with something else. And what I think happened is in The Last of Us Part 1, that game worked for both. And in The Last of Us Part 2, they accidentally cut out everybody who played for wish fulfillment and only catered to people that played for narrative transportation.
And when I recommend The Last of Us Part 2 to people, I do it like this. I say, it's one of the best games I've ever played. I love it so much. It's a huge bummer. I can totally understand why it might not be your thing. Like, and I think that's like, it's for a different reason, but I get why The Last of Us Part 2 might be a hard game for some people to play and why they might not really get into it. But as a person who just appreciates a good story and to be transported, I think, and this is my opinion, not gospel by any means, but I think if the choices that Joel made in the first game never caught up with him, I don't think that would have been very narratively satisfying for me. If Joel just kept on getting to do whatever in The Last of Us Part 2, and there was no kind of, that would have felt disingenuous and unrealistic for me. And so the fact that it did catch up with him and he did ultimately have to pay the price for what he did is like, yeah, of course he did. No, like there wasn't any way that was just going to slide. Someone was going to come looking for him. Something was going to happen. And so that felt really narratively satisfying to me, even though it was a super upsetting moment that I didn't want to happen, which I feel for me is the thesis of this game, narrative satisfaction while being horrified and really upset with what's happening.
I think it's perfect of just, there's no happily ever after, which I think is very realistic, not just in that world, but just life in general. I think that's why it resonates a lot with me, is there's no perfectly wrapped up bow to life. It's our past decisions, our past choices have an effect on our future. And in Joel's case, unfortunately, shooting a doctor in the crotch 85 times caught up with him.
Yeah.
Is that where you think I said?
Yeah. Shooting,
It was 86. Get it right.
Shooting people in the genitals over and over again. There's no
I
goal.
stopped where my inventory stopped.
He killed everyone with bottles and bricks
it
so that
was-
he could just save all of his ammo for the end.
The entire child's hospital was Rambo with a knife.
A knife.
Until I got to the doctor. So I, for a long time, was dismissive of people that had compartmentalized this game because of Joel's death. And I just wanted to give a permission structure that I actually understand now that they have a point. I have made my argument, I think persuasively, that the narrative mechanics of the story forced this to be the conclusion to Joel's story arc. I understand why it was unsatisfying to not be able to reprise Joel's role. I understand that left a void in people's hearts, and that's what they actually wanted from the game. I can't overgeneralize this, but it could be said that people that play for wish fulfillment don't feel empowered in their own lives. And so they need media or some form of escape in order to feel that empowerment. I don't know, maybe there's some introspection to do there to see if that is reflective of who you are. I think that's an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah. If you feel that way, The Last of Us Part 2 is going to be a real bummer of a game for you. Because, yeah.
Yeah. And on the flip side of it, there are people who still, their wish fulfillment is going to be played out through Ellie. It wasn't through Joel in the first place, right? Like there's a whole generation of young people too, who see Ellie as a very empowering figure, who see her as a very inspiring figure, see her as someone who's very resilient, who goes through a lot and still finds a way to plow forward. For a whole flip side of the demographic, you're going to get wish fulfillment in a different way, and it can come through Ellie. But if you're looking for the strong man, shoot 'em up type wish fulfillment character, yeah, Last of Us Part 2 is definitely a bummer in that.
You can play the first one over and over
or you
again.
can, there are lots of other games that offer you that wish fulfillment too, and I don't want to yuck any of those games either, but yeah,
They made the first one 3 times. You have some options.
There you go. The Last of Us again, and The Last of Us again. Yeah.
Okay, follow me on this theory here. My theory as to why Utah drivers are so terrible and just awful to be around. Utah is known to be such a happy place. You have a lot of religious people who are like, hey guys, hello. And they're so incredibly happy and chipper, and they're always having to be like, Heidi ho, neighbor, diddly diddly, the Ned Flanders of the world. And when they get on the road,
Doesn't describe me, but go on.
oh, sorry. No, okay, actually sidetrack. The creators of South Park,
And
Trey
Matt
Parker
Stone.
and Matt Stone, So apparently the reason they made Book of Mormon musical is they're like, on musicals, people are so happy, and that's not real life, except for the Mormons. It's something along those lines. And so they made a musical about Mormons because they feel like Mormons really are that crazy and happy, just a little too eccentric.
At
But
least
anyways,
superficially,
so
yeah.
And they walk around like
Walk
this.
around
all the
like
time,
this going,
yeah.
2 by
yes, I
2.
do. Exactly. Hello. So anyways, I love that. I love that musical. So my theory is that we have to be so nice and almost superficial. And so when we get behind the wheel of a car and there is a disconnect there of you don't have to face other people on the road, you can be your true nature of that's when the anger gets to come out. That's when you really get to just rage on the road. And that's why there's so many crazy drivers in freaking Utah. But that's segue back to the game. Maybe that wish fulfillment, people have to be one way, they have to act one way in society, but they get that wish fulfillment of maybe a touch of their true nature of being able to be Joel and to be violent. You have a lot of people who are like, well, in an apocalypse, I would survive. I would be the person who goes and storms the mall, and I would survive it, and I would be this rough and tough man. They get that wish fulfillment. And yeah, maybe that's something to be said here, like what Shan was saying, is that they were expecting to be able to indulge that nature, the fantasy of this is what I think I would be like in this situation. And they don't get that, and they were upset when Joel was taken away. Although if they had just waited a little bit longer, they would realize that if they played as Abby, I got my wish fulfillment. I'm very
Abby
delicate.
Is like Lady
Abby
Joel.
is
No, but
she's
so
Yes.
hardcore.
Important to wish fulfillment is to be able to identify. Let's be real. Most people that play video games are men, and they're not going to identify with Ellie or Abby. And I think that's where a lot of the tension was with people that were divisive over this game.
Even though Abby
Well,
is
I am a
stronger
delicate
than
girl,
Joel.
so I wanted to be the strong Abby.
All right, so let's wrap this up with one last question. Are you on board with revenge?
At the concept, no. But in this instance, maybe. And
I'll carve out an exception.
No, but here's the thing, and I think that we'll get into this a little bit in the next episode because Tommy kind of talks about it. But when they're talking about, no, I'm going to save it for next episode. I'm going to leave that as a cliffhanger. As a concept, no, revenge is not great. But in this instance, maybe, and I'll explain why next time. Cliffhanger. Now you have to come back to the next episode.
Yeah, you know what? No social contract being in place between communities. I think justice has to be enforced somehow, and there's no incarceration that can be enforced. There's no judicial system. So yeah, I think I'm on board, but I'm open to being persuaded that it's wrong. I don't know. I've played this so many times that I'm always convinced that I'm wrong in the end, but like I'm always convinced to do it again. That makes sense?
I guess so. I mean, yes, I think it does make sense. Like where I'm personally at, I don't think revenge is ever justice. I don't think justice ever really gets played out as revenge. I think we have lots of good reasons for wanting revenge. I understand the emotion, I understand the impulse, and I don't fault any human for having that impulse. But personally, where I'm at is I don't ever really think revenge solves any problems, fixes anything, or is ultimately satisfying to the people who think that revenge will solve what they wanted. Like if what they wanted was consequences for someone who had done them wrong, I think there are lots of ways for those consequences to play themselves out. I think revenge always takes a piece of the humanity of the person seeking it, no matter how just you think your reason is. So while I understand the impulse, that's just where I sit personally. I don't ever think revenge can truly be justified.
So I think it's interesting because I think violence as a response isn't the right answer, but we're in a unique situation where there is no judicial system. So why would the answer be to just walk away? And there's no way to incarcerate Abby for what she did. There was no way to incarcerate Joel either. Argument could be made both ways, but like the answer can't be to just walk away either. It's a gray area only because there is no social order. Again, like the violent nature of it, I don't agree with, but I understand why it's the only solution for her at this time.
Yeah, I don't want it to sound like I'm just criticizing Abby, like, oh, you should have just gotten on with your life. What were you wasting the last 4 years of your life hunting down?
Yeah, she doesn't know why Abby did it.
She doesn't. And the fact that if I were Abby and my father had gotten Swiss cheesed by Bullet then in the crotch, and he had been given back to me as a Ziploc bag of silly putty, I can understand.
It's the only way I give back fathers.
I can understand that impulse. I can absolutely understand that. So I'm not trying to say that Abby's a bad person for spending all these years of her life living for revenge on Joel, and then to finally get it and to do it in such a brutal fashion. It's not that. It's just, are there other ways those consequences could have played out? I get that there's not a government. I get that there's not like a prison cell waiting for Joel, and who's going to be the morality police here. I get all of that. But but see, on some human level, you will never, ever, ever solve the world's problems by living in this feedback loop. One of the reasons why I'm so disappointed in the situation in the Middle East is because we continue to create generations of victims. War after war after war after war. No matter how justified anyone is, you killed my father in a war, so I'm going to kill you in a war. And then your children will want to kill my children in a war. That cycle will never, 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 ever, ever, never, never, ever, ever, never end until there is an entire generation of people willing to live for a higher, greater cause.
We saw this play out in Iron Man, right? Where Tony Stark was responsible for the bombs dropping, and then we got Wanda and what's her brother's name? But they were made in the aftermath of Tony's violence, or at least the violence that he was tethered to. Did he deserve the consequences for that? Just to make it a little less serious.
Yeah, and we continue. Violence always breeds more violence until it doesn't, or unless it doesn't. And revenge is always, I think, feeding into the worst of our instincts, if that makes sense. I don't think...
Yeah, somebody has to have the maturity to de-escalate. Yeah. And I don't know how you
and I can't be the person
choose to be that
I
one.
can't be the person to tell Abby, you should have been the bigger person here. Just de-escalate the situation, girl. Like, because how the audacity for me to say that to Abby. But on some level, if you're ever going to actually solve people's problems, revenge is never going to solve the problem. It's just not.
Well, I really love how that is the overarching theme here of the second game is revenge, and how that never really you've come to find out that they never really it's the cost of revenge, and it never really solves anything because it just further complicates the issue. I love how complicated it is, the story here, versus something like Kill Bill, where
hilarious movie.
Yes, it's a comedy, just like The Bear, sure. But basically, with something as simple as Kill Bill, the whole story is her getting revenge. But it was just, she tried to move on, and she tried to start a new life, and she was pregnant with his baby, whatever. But he comes in, kills everybody, and she goes to get her revenge, right? Because her family was taken away. Her unborn child was taken away, supposedly. But anyways, so that's just so simple. You're rooting for her the whole time. Hey, she needs to get her revenge. Yeah, just go around and just hit KO everybody. But this story is just so rich and beautiful and complicated, and it really makes you think, because everyone is hurting each other, and this turns into this whole cycle of revenge and abuse where everyone is trying to get what's theirs. You don't realize just how justified everybody is here, and how much you feel very complicated in your feelings, because, you only know one side of the story so far. And you're like, why is she trying to get revenge? Like, let's just go Kill Bill her. Let's just go get our revenge because she came in and killed Joel, and now we got to go take it out on her. But then you go further into the story and you realize just how complicated it is, and you put yourself in someone else's shoes. You realize it's their revenge story as well. And you start to realize, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know who to root for in this situation. And it really makes you think. It's so complicated.
Yeah, that's why it's nice to look at it from that 10,000-foot view, right? Because if you're Ellie, you're going to feel 100% justified killing Abby. If you're Abby, you're going to feel 100% justified killing Joel, right? And so looking at it from that standpoint, but like you said, Emerlie, once you walk around in Abby's shoes, and if you're Abby, I think you can see how you being in that situation, it would drive you to that. It would drive you to that vengeance.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to have a new cut of this game where somebody hasn't played the first one and you start as Abby seeing her father dead, and then you go find Joel and you kill him. And then it plays out as part 2 does, but then you're forced to play as Ellie and you learn her backstory. It's interesting. It's just, we only care about Ellie because she's the one we started with. Yeah. And I also wanted to pitch another controversial thought, but isn't criminal justice just collective vengeance?
Oh man,
non-violent collective
that's
vengeance?
a big question. I have thoughts about our criminal justice system. I have many thoughts, right? Because there's holding someone responsible, right? There's holding someone accountable for their actions, and certainly consequences can have something to do with the reformation, the rehabilitation of someone who's done something bad. But for the most part, I feel like our criminal justice system is just out to punish people. It's not about the humanity of it.
For money.
It's for money. Yeah, it makes money and it's out to punish people. It feeds the worst of us. I don't think it's always about what it should be about, which is rehabilitation, restitution. If that's what we've really cared about, our criminal justice system would look super different.
Yeah, our recidivism rate wouldn't be as high as it is.
Totally.
You get what I'm saying.
We breed more violence. We breed more crime because of the way we treat it.
So if criminal justice is just nonviolent collective vengeance,
sometimes violent collective vengeance,
then if we don't have a collective, is the violence justified? I don't know.
With no one to protect?
I don't know. Not as gray as the first game was. This is more about vengeance, which is more black and white than moral absolutism and utilitarianism. But it is still something interesting to think about. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Remember that you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and enable notifications so you never miss our new episodes, which drop on Monday. And we have indie episodes that drop on Thursdays. Occasionally we'll drop new types of content. Keep an eye out for that. We haven't done it yet, but we will. And maybe by the time this episode drops, we will have that stuff starting to come out. But we want to grow our community to be able to have more of these discussions and have people find like-minded people to have their own discussions with and just foster community. That's what we're really hoping for, because we love games and we don't want there to be any tabooism around discussing video games intellectually, even though it's dumb. We love it. So we are trying to destigmatize it. But thank you for hanging out with us. A fade out noise.
Beep, 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 beep. Eric's outro.
Outro. Bleep-a-doof, bleep-a-deep, bloop-a-dee-blow.